The world's oldest surviving book made using movable metal printing, Korea's Jikji Simche Yojeol, is on public display in Paris for the first time in half a century. It was printed in the 14th century. For more on this Korean literary treasure, we're joined by director David Redman. He's also a co-director of the documentary on Jikji, Jikji Code. Welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us. First off, Director Redman, I've read that you are the one who proposed making the Jikji story into the documentary Jikji Code. What was it about the story that made you so passionate about it?
Well, I'd been to Korea before, and I'd heard about Jikji, and I kind of discounted that this was the first book. I grew up in the Canadian education system, and we were taught that Gutenberg had invented movable metal print, and he changed the world. So back in 2013, I was traveling in Europe, and a friend of mine asked me to go to the French National Library and apply to see Jikji. I was curious, I went along, and we were shocked by the attitude of the staff at the library. Nobody knew anything about Jikji, and they even pointed out to us that Gutenberg was first, not Jikji. So finally, we found one person that looked Jikji up on the internet. And they said, oh my God, it's here and we own it. And what an amazing collection we have. And so, I just realized at that time just how prevalent eurocentrism is. And then I started to analyze my own thoughts on that and how I was resistant to believing that this technology came from Korea and it wasn't a different vocabulary or a different technology. It was movable metal print. So then I started looking at, I realized I also had shared this Eurocentric view, and it comes from the systems that we were taught and we grew up in. So then I thought, looked at what UNESCO and the Korean government were doing to promote Jikji. And I thought, well, if you look at it, over almost everybody in the world, nobody knows anything about Jikji. So I wanted to do something to try and help change that narrative and try to right this historic wrong. And that's when I started making this documentary.
That's amazing. Your curiosity turned into discovering much uncovered history, and also turning that history into a meaningful masterpiece, the documentary Jikji Code.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
And
I'm
also,
not sure it's a masterpiece, but
it is a good documentary. Now, for those who may be unfamiliar with the history behind Jikji, could you explain why Jikji is in France at the moment, not Korea?
Okay. So in the 19th century, the first French ambassador to Korea was Colin de Plancy. And he was a collector of books and art and furniture. And he took Jikji back to France, and it ended up being donated to the French National Library. And they lost it for decades. And then in 1967, Dr. Byung-sung Park, a Korean academic working at the library, rediscovered it. Now, the current French government stance is they would loan Jikji back to South Korea. But right now, as you know, it's on display at the French National Library. And if you want to see it, you got to buy a ticket and fly to Paris to see it.
Right. Well, it sounds like you have much passion for not just Jikji, but also overall the books and the metal printing and involving all the history. Now, the question is, why do Jikji's story and history matter? I mean, why does the world need to know and learn about it, as you've created a documentary on it, a whole documentary on it?
Right. Well, Jikji is important for several reasons, and one of them is spiritual. Jikji's message is non-possession, ironically, and another message is interconnectivity. But also the technology. This is the proof that Korea was using this technology before anyone else. Now, movable metal print, it's metal, so it's hard, it's durable, it's movable. So the economy of scale allowed books to be produced en masse. So that changed the way that we were able to record and transmit information. And in Europe, in the 15th century, that started the world's first information revolution. And so if we look at Korea, I think that this is actually Korea's most important cultural export. We have K-pop, K-drama, and my favorite is K-food, but this is K-print, if you will, and it changed the world.
Right. Before we let you go quickly, please do share with us one of your favorite memories from the filming the documentary.
Oh, okay. I don't know if this is my favorite, but it's certainly the most impactful. On the third last day of our European trip, we've been there for three weeks. We had everything stolen in Rome, our computers, our camera equipment, our footage. And so it was devastating. It was a crisis, and it was a point where I was thinking we weren't going to be able to continue this project. And so, but in a crisis, it sounds cliche, but you find a detail that spurs you on. And we've been doing a lot of research on the envoys in the 13th and 14th century that have been traveling from Europe all the way to Beijing and Korea. Now, those people really suffered a lot of hardships and dangers on the road. And here we were in hotel rooms in Rome eating, wonderful Korean or Italian food and moaning about the situation. So I had a credit card left, the only one on the team, and we took that card and we rented a car and we drove back across Europe for 2 weeks and we shot the film.
Wow, what a story that turned out to be, like I said, a masterpiece.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you so much for joining us this morning and also your insights all the way from Toronto.
Okay, thank you.